Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Biters, the podcast about all things Walking Dead and zombies. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Marsick, and with me, as always, is my second in command, Kirk Manley.
What's up?
So, we are here this week, one episode away from the mid-season finale.
It's gone
episode
fast.
7.
It's gone so fast.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I know.
Normally, don't they do a countdown? Okay, there's only 2 more episodes before the mid-season break. Now all of a sudden they just kind of sprang it on me. No foreplay or anything, just bam.
Well, it's probably because of the two governor episodes. Kind of steered another direction for a while, so they didn't. But man, yeah, it's gone fast.
The mid-season break already. So
how long is the break usually? Don't they come? When do they come back in February?
I believe they come back in February.
Okay, so it's all of January and all of December.
Yeah, when you're out doing your Christmas shopping and recovering from the holidays in January, then. So one thing before we talk about this week's episode. Episode 7 called Dead Weight. Just a little recap about the numbers from last week's live bait episode. We talked about on the podcast how Walking Dead for 3 weeks beat the NFL and crushed it. And then the Cowboys game on Sunday night 2 weeks ago reversed it. They beat Walking Dead, but then last week with live bait, 12 million people tuned in and made it the most watched cable show of the night. So
they're still, the momentum is still going.
Still going. It'll be interesting to see, knowing how this was going to be a second governor-centric episode, how many viewers we lost week to week from live bait to dead weight this week.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting because it seemed that based on taking a pulse online that there was much more diversity in the like and dislike of the episode versus the previous 5 episodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that there was kind of unanimously positive up until that episode. Then there was people who loved that episode and people who hated that episode. So, or at least that was my interpretation.
Wait, loved? You either loved or hated the dead weight?
No, live
live
bait. So to your comment or your question, what will that have an effect on the viewership this week because of the fact that they knew it was another governor-centric episode?
Right. Well, there's an article online that I found. Wet Paint had it, and they were talking about. They made mention how. I guess Andrew Lincoln gave an interview to Atlanta Magazine back in October, and he has a quote here that said, "My job is to serve my character in the scripts that I'm given. I just read 2 scripts, both of which I'm not in, and I think they're the greatest episodes we've ever had. There's a depth to it." Yeah, hold your guffawing until the end. There's a depth to it. Character pushes story this season a lot more. We've got a very good combination of great storytelling and action sequences. So, he thought they were the best 2 episodes. Well, that's what we're here to debate.
Yeah.
Before we start talking, I just one of the things I saw that was interesting here were the writer and director. The director was Jeremy Podeswa, if the W is a V. He's a first-time director here for Walking Dead.
And this week's episode.
Yeah. And the writer as well, Curtis Gwynn. This is his first time writing for Walking Dead as well.
The writer of Live Bait, though, was a woman that had written for Walking Dead before, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So let's get into it.
Well, one thing we didn't do last week was we didn't rate last week's episode. 1 to 5 headshots. So I wanted to make sure I pointed out. I'm giving last week's a 2 because I was really disappointed.
I'm with you right there. There was just too much moping around, not enough, too much telling and not showing, and it drove me nuts too. So I'm with you right there. I gave it a 2.
And this week I felt I felt this week was a much better episode than the previous one. I've still got issues, which we'll talk about, but I gave this one 3.5 headshots.
Yeah, I'd probably be around there as well. Probably, I'd lean probably closer to 3. It just, it's one of those things we said before we started doing this. I told you that in the comic book, the governor is one of those villains he's just one of the best villains that's ever been created, and because he's just he's everything that you want in a villain, and I liked him as a character, and how he was done in the comic book with being as maniacal as he was, and yet having the daughter that he kept chained up, that little shred of humanity that he had there, I always thought made him an interesting character. But for the past 2 episodes, what they've done with the governor is I don't know, he just bores me. There's just been no.
Well, the problem last week was that they tried to say that he had been torn down so low that he was like basically at ground zero, and he was back to being this average Joe, and it just wasn't believable. It just wasn't believable. He was too far gone by the end of last season. He was he had too long been in the seat of king and monarch, and I just didn't see him getting down to that level. I could see him being totally, destroyed by what happened and emotionally vapid or vacant. But, to then walk the earth in a Forrest Gump kind of journey and then turn into, Mr. Dad with this family just didn't, and I get what they were trying to do to, have it, build one way and then have his character transition. But it was unbelievable. And then even to that point, and I don't want to get into it yet because we'll talk about it more later, but to some degree it's unbelievable that essentially he's now back to where he was. So all that character development did what? It just brought us back to where we were. So there really wasn't any character development. You know what I mean?
It was yeah. It's felt like marching in place. Just we're just gonna log some time here until that mid-season finale, which we'll talk about what we saw in the trailer in a few minutes. But it just felt that that's what we were doing. It's just these were just placeholders.
Right.
So, if you're new tuning into Biters, what we do is we dissect the show. We do it the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's how we do it. And break down. That's how we do it.
That's how we do it.
And so, Kirk, start off. What was the good part of the episode? What did you like about it?
I actually, like I said, I gave this a 1.5 more in rating score. I thought overall it was a much better episode. It was much more entertaining to watch. The writing was better. The character development was better. Obviously Morrissey plays a great villain, and it was great to see that villain start to raise its head again. There was I have a lot of stuff that I thought was good. The opening music, I thought, with the whole opening sequence, again, they've done a great job this year, every episode with their opening sequences, I think. And even last week's episode, which I had so much trouble with, the opening sequence was the only part that I really enjoyed and thought was really top notch. This week, same thing. He's washing he's doing the laundry, kind of, metaphorical for, his dirty laundry, and the conversation he's had with Megan is about, are we going to be okay because we're all good? Just excellent character development, and the music that was playing it was just very low and grating and scary. The music was just scary, and yet here you were having this touching, tender moment between the two of them, and then he sits down, and he's she says, "It's your turn," and he says, "I'm thinking," and he's thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue to just try to be a good dad, or am I going to protect these people the way I know how to protect them? And he sits down, and then you pull back and you see the tank, which is this obvious huge metaphor for this monster, this beast that's inside of him that
Right.
he's, just trying to decide whether to let out or not, and just great, just really well done.
Yeah, the music is done by, as we've mentioned before, it's done by Bear McCreary, who's if you remember Lost and how quintessential Michael Giacchino was to that show. I think Bear McCreary he's the same way for The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was awesome. I liked when they found the survivalist camp and how it was like such a great way for the to rub in the governor's face, his own past.
Right.
And they find the dead body of the liar, murderer, and then the other one rapist. It was just like all these things that really kind of surmised his past and what he had
Right.
done. And then the picture he finds of the survivors of his wife and his kid, it looks almost identical to his own picture that he had. So here was a guy who was just like him, who had been, unable to protect his family, who, ended up.
There was a blood stain over his eye too in the picture, or was it like a tack print? There was something over the guy's eye in the picture.
Yeah, in the picture. I don't know what that was. But and then he even kept kept the daughter and the wife in the house, very much like he kept Penny.
Yep.
And then he had the heads of the guys that he had killed, who had obviously been the ones to hurt his family or kill them or whatever. So, it was almost like trophies the way that he was with the fish tanks. And it all just came raining in on him, at that place. And I thought that was really well done. Obviously the whole sequence with Martinez, I think was great. I thought that, the way that brought out the final straw for him, it was kind of, poor Martinez, his big mistake was taking him out of that pit. He should have put a bullet in him right then. It's like he knew what this guy was about, he had been there. Yeah. And but that was his fatal flaw. He made the mistake, and then he tries to, he's kind of created this great new place, but it's still a huge burden to be the leader of it. And I think he was kind of looking for help in that regard. But the governor realized that this guy wasn't going to be able to keep them any safer because he was sloppy. He was getting drunk and. Right. Yeah. He even says to the governor, I applaud you because I couldn't get a family. I wouldn't be willing to get a family again because I couldn't protect them. Right. And so, that.
Well, I think he also say when he's up there hitting golf balls, doesn't he also say, basically admit that he doesn't know if he can keep that camp safe?
Yeah, exactly. All of that's implied. And I think you see the governor's face like twitch. It's almost like the twig snaps and he realizes this guy isn't going to be able to do it.
Right.
And then, there was also the scene prior to that when they're all having like the picnic and Martinez is talking about the past and the walls at Woodbury and immediately the governor gets up and because, that's the past he's trying to forget. It's the past he hasn't shared with this new family. And so this is the only guy that can kind of like shine light on what happened in the past. Right. And so in that way, he's a bit of a threat. So one, he's not going to be strong enough to keep them safe and keep the place running the way the governor wants it to run. And two, he's a potential threat in terms of his current family relationship. So he's got to go. I thought that was really well done. I thought the mud zombies were cool. It was. When I get into the section about, the bad, I don't see how that could stop them from, going around or going a different way. But metaphorically, it was interesting, it was just kind of how he can't escape. It's really, they've been repeating that constantly, that imagery throughout the last two episodes of, how he can't escape this horror that he's in, and that no matter how he tries. I also wondered if that wasn't somewhat of a way of kind of bringing up all the people that he killed at Woodbury when he gunned down his It was
Oh,
almost kind of like the ghosts of those people that he had gunned down,
that's a good
been
point.
unable
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean? And in that way, it kind of throughout the episode there was references to the dead weight, I thought, and I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of his dead weight. You know what I mean? Martinez was his dead weight. This, all these people that he had killed were his dead weight. Let's see. I really liked. I'm jumping ahead here. I really liked the insight we got into his childhood, and that he doesn't like heroes because in his mind they can't protect you from the monsters, and that's what he says basically to Peter, the guy, one of the guy who was the second leading guy that he killed.
Right.
He says to his brother, and he feels that way obviously because his own brother, who he saw as a hero, or at least that's what he tells the guy. He couldn't protect him from the monster that was his father.
Right.
And he says angry at him like, oh, he was a fool to be a hero. And what did it get? I'm two black eyes and a broken rib, and I still got beat up. And so he's bitter about it. But, it's also that I think it's because he wasn't able to protect him. So obviously heroes aren't worth anything in his mind. And the irony is that he's kind of become the monster that his father was to him when he was a child.
Right.
So, it's this weird, twisted, all this pain from his father and the way he was treated as a child, gets misdirected onto his brother who tried to be her hero and protect him. And in fact, it ends up just creating, basically a duplicate of his old man. So I thought that was really cool and very Freudian and psychological, and I thought it was done well. It was subtle. It wasn't overly beat over the head, but it does definitely explain a lot of the obsession that he has with Rick.
Yep.
Because Rick obviously is much more like the guy Peter that he had to take out, much more maybe like his own brother. Just kind of represents the other way of approaching survival. And so I thought that was cool.
But the problem with that is I mean, first of all, it's a pretty bleak outlook on life if you just don't believe in heroes at all. But he's got to see that Rick is capable of being a hero. Look, he's led his tribe. He's kept them alive. The only time they really ran into trouble was when they got into Woodbury and the governor just tried to mow them all down. He's got to see in Rick that he can aspire to be something like that. That the hero, the guy with the white hat, that is possible. It is possible to pull that off.
Well, I think he thinks of himself that way.
Oh, he definitely sees himself as doing, like we said before, just kind of playing in the gray area of. I don't think that he sees that the things that he does are necessarily. He could justify everything that he does. Right. So he doesn't do. He's not a mass murderer, a rapist, or anything. He is just a heavy-handed leader.
Right.
I think he would describe himself as, and he's doing what has to be done to protect his people.
Well, he says to Peter's brother, I can't remember his name.
Mitch.
People like your brother always try to do the right thing, even at the risk of their own people. And so in his mind, that is more destructive, potentially, than doing amoral things, as long as you're doing it to completely protect those that you care about.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so in that way, I do think he sees himself as a hero. But it's a twisted thing, if you ask me.
Oh, completely.
I liked the Peter in the lake, the zombified Peter in the lake, who again is weighted down, kind of dead weight again. That was cool. It also harkened back to the fish tanks.
Right.
The fact that he, keeps going back there before he has to make all these kind of big decisions to kind of look that evil, as he had said back when last season when he was trying to explain why he had the tanks to Lori, I think, right?
Yeah.
That he felt he had to constantly look at that to remind himself of, what the world was really like and what he had to be in order to survive in it and protect these people.
Yeah, and you don't get a bigger fish tank than that lake.
No. But that was some wild photography. I saw
great.
A clip too on the Talking Dead, which was after where maybe it was online. I don't remember, but they shot that in a pool, and they actually he had a breather and he had to and they brought scuba gear down and shot it all underwater. It was really, really cool, really well done. As you had mentioned, I thought they did a much better job showing rather than telling, in this episode versus last week. And again, for another good example of that was the girls' relationship, the gay relationship was, in the last episode, it was talked about in a totally inept way that was unnecessary to be brought up, and that was just obviously being said in order to throw in our face so that we would know it wasn't. But in this episode, they just demonstrate it, and it's just going on.
Right.
She meets the girl, they start dating. There's, they're a couple, and it was just happened, and that's the way. It's always better, I think, from a story point of view.
Yep.
When we see it done that way. I like too that the whole "I don't want it" when he's dragging Martinez to the pit. It's like he doesn't, but at the same time, it's like, what's that? Is it Shakespeare? I think methinks thou does protest too much. It's like if you're busy dragging the guy to the to the zombie pit to kill him, and you're saying "I don't want it, I don't want it," you kind of like maybe want it.
Yeah,
there's a part of you that wants that. So, and I thought that was pretty well done.
One of my big things that I liked here, well, first of all, I'm going to say the biggest thing that I liked was the pullback before the first commercial break. When he sits there, and I agree with you, I thought that opening was actually fantastic. Right. The entendres that were going on, the double meaning between the speak that was going on, I thought it was great. And when he stands there and she says, "It's your turn," and he's like, "I'm thinking." And then the camera pulls back, and for me, it was the tank. So for those of us who've read the comic book and we know what the tank represents, that was a huge geek moment. Just as the trailer for next week, we see the tank surrounded by the cars outside the prison. We've been waiting for that one. So that was the first part. I got to say that the good, even though I thought that while last week the governor was basically just moping around, trying to find himself, I guess, and here it was the conflict between Brian Harriet and the governor. So there was, when they come across that camp, and what's his name? Not Mitch. The brother says,
Peter.
Mitch, when Mitch said we should hit the camp, and Peter says, "No, we shouldn't. We should invite them in and be friends." And you could just see the look on the governor's face that was, Brian Harriet. When I was a kid, I had a Big Jim. Okay, Big Jim was a Mattel knockoff of GI Joe.
Yeah, with the kung fu grip.
The kung fu grip. And you ratchet his arm up, push the button on his back.
I had one.
And his face goes from like, "Hi, I'm Jim," to "I'm going to kick your ass, Jim," for the spinning of his face. And I kind of got that same kind of feel watching David Morrissey portray the dual aspect of his character in this, because Brian Harriet just wants to be, he just wants to be a part of the group and help out and help everything go along, but then he can see how tactically stupid it is to not invade that camp and take all their supplies. And then later on,
wait a minute. I'm not necessarily in agreement that they should have done that. I think that, but I am in agreement with you that he thinks that they should have done that.
Well, exactly. Right. I'm lending voice to the governor. That was
got it.
And the and later on, other times later on, when we saw Martinez basically say, I can't lead this camp, I don't know if I can lead the camp. And then, like you said, the facial twitch, which is just, Harriet fighting the governor. And I think that and I think that when he's dragging Martinez to the pit and he's screaming, "I don't want it, I don't want it," that's you know how it is when you get angry or you kind of have like an out of body experience. There's your head saying no, 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 and then your body's just running on autopilot. And I think that was the governor the governor side of him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Dragging him along.
There was definitely internal conflict going on there. Absolutely. It was interesting though because, in one way, the governor thinks that he's being the most realistic. That his approach is the realistic way to deal with this world.
Right.
But that conversation with Martinez, where Martinez is basically saying you can't keep people safe in this world anymore. And the governor, he wants his family to exist as it did before. And that's just never going to happen.
Right.
And it's his inability to accept that kind of is his fatal flaw. So in one respect, what I'm saying is that Martinez is right in some regards, and the governor is living in a fantasy. And that he thinks that if he's super super evil and super calculating and totally willing to kill anything and anybody to protect it, that he's going to be able to get his family back the way it was, and that it just ain't going to happen. You know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's
funny how they in 2 episodes they do a breakdown of Governor 1.0. They reduce him to the studs, and then they build him back up. And Governor 2.0 is. It was basically like having another origin story of him. And we kind of know the story about how he came to power in Woodbury and absolute power corrupted him absolutely, blah, blah, blah. Now he's Governor 2.0. He's walking right down that same path. He's going. And,
I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my bad section because I personally think that's a weakness in this particular chapter or these 2 chapters. One other good thing I thought was, it's definitely been these 2 episodes have been a mirror image of Rick's experience. When Rick loses, his family and all the violence and everything, like especially when he lost Lori, he kind of surrounds himself with people and casts off the role of leadership and focuses on being a good father to Carl. When the governor lost Woodbury and what was left of his daughter, he went the opposite direction and cut himself off from all people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we saw, Rick's journey back to leadership this season, and now we've seen the governor's. And, it was interesting at the last episode of The Prison, which was the one where he and Carl take on the big horde coming through the fence or whatever. Yep. He straps on his gun and his belt again. And then, it's kind of like it's time to put away the fantasy and go back to surviving. You know what I mean? And the governor does the same thing in this episode where he puts the belt on with the gun.
But what was interesting was that when Rick did it, Rick just straps it on and he just knows this is what has to be. Do you see the hesitation that the governor had when he was kind of putting his on? He had just killed what's-his-face and he's putting it on a little bit slower.
But I think they're both saying that move for both characters is saying, I'm stepping back into the leadership role.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a mirror image, which was, I thought that was kind of cool artistically and from the writing point of view. Okay, those are kind of the highlights for me, what I thought were the good parts of the episode. Any others from you?
No, that's about it. It was very. I gotta say one thing that I kind of hoped it was gonna go in, and it didn't go in that direction. Because I thought it was pretty overt what they were trying to do about the governor facing all of the things, walking along and seeing the headless bodies, liar, rapist, murderer, and him basically seeing, those are for him those are the ghosts of Christmas past, right? So. As he's going along, and I thought that was a little heavy-handed. But so when you saw the first body, you're like, "Whoa, that's kind of wild." Someone had his head cut off and deemed, a liar. Okay, whatever. And then you go on to the second one. Again, the head chopped off, and now I'm thinking, wait, was this Michonne's work? Now I'm starting to think that as it goes on, okay, nobody. This is kind of curious. Are we developing a sub, like a sub storyline going on here?
The cannibals from the comic book. I thought that.
Yeah, I was kind of looking for maybe that was going to turn into something, but it just went on to more, because when we get to the cabin and the heads on the floor, which were kind of cool, by the way, those heads just chattering on the floor.
Yeah, that was cool. That was freaky.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to open up the bad. I'll start with the bad this time. Martinez takes the cake for the bad part of this episode, because
it's funny.
First of all,
he's my character of the week.
Okay, so Martinez, I like the actor. I like the character. I don't buy a couple things. I don't buy the talk on the edge of the pit when he said, well, if it was just you in the pit, I'd have left you in there, or I'd have shot you, put a bullet in your head. But because you had somebody with you, I'm gonna take you out. All right, you know what? I don't buy it at that moment. I don't buy it, but all right, I'll let that go. What I just really don't buy it at all is this is the second in command to the governor, back when Governor 1.0. He knows all the governor's dirty laundry, all the governor's secrets, was there on all the missions when they killed soldiers and they did all the bad things. And then they're sitting after they take out the cabin, and even when they were standing there at the doorway and they know that there's a zombie and there's a biter inside, and Martinez, instead of sending one of his guys in, because Martinez is in charge, right, and he calls over the governor to kind of play red shirt for the moment. Yeah, you go in, and I kind of like that. It was like, all right, I'm in charge, you go in. And then at the end, when they're sitting there having a beer, having a brewski, and recapping and talking, and Martinez looks at him and says, "You seem different now, changed, are you?" And the governor says, "Yes." Okay, good for me. Like a thumbs up from Martinez. Come on, are you serious?
I don't know. I think it was a kind of a realistic portrayal of someone who's let their ego kind of make some bad decisions for them. I mean, he probably thought maybe this guy had changed some, but I think it was also, he had always been under this guy's thumb, and now he was in charge, and he was, saw this opportunity, saw him as being somewhat weaker, and that he wanted a chance to kind of brag, to kind of say, oh, look, I'm doing a better job, and that's kind of insinuated throughout. That was one of the first times, is when he makes him go in and do the dirty work. It's kind of like, sure, here, you clean the bathroom. You know what I mean? And then when they're doing the golf balls, he's making him hand him the golf balls like he's his caddy. You know what I mean? And I think all of that was just burning the hell out of the governor. But it was also, Martinez kind of
well,
letting his ego get in the way,
But you don't poke to quote Eddie Izzard here, you don't poke a badger with a spoon and expect that it's not going to turn around and bite you. So when he gets clubbed over the head,
people do that all the time. I think that's realistic. I think people do that all the time. They make stupid decisions like that. They think they're in the control seat, and they're not. You know what I mean? They think
But that's also, and that's true. But that's also. That's not when you're in an apocalyptic situation like those guys are. Personalities, I mean, it's in reality, no one would ever. We would find it. We find it appalling that, hey, yeah, we see this camp over here with roughly 10 people. Let's just go in there and steal their supplies. We'll kill a few if they get in our way. But in that situation, that's a serious consideration. Something that you. No, do.
I agree with you, and I think if you're a smart enough person, savvy enough, you realize that. And the example of that is Merle.
Right.
Merle knew exactly what the deal was with the governor.
Yes.
And Merle was letting that go on because it was benefiting him. The minute it started to threaten him or not benefit him, he took off, and he turned tables. And that's because Merle was smart. You know what I mean? Right. I didn't like Merle. Merle was, disgusting, but he was a smart guy. You can't fault him that. I think Martinez had always been a flunky kind of guy, and now all of a sudden he was kind of in charge and kind of running on the fumes of being the power fumes. And I think he just thought he had the upper hand, and he was just gonna put the screws to this guy a little bit and have some fun, and but at the same time, I think he also felt a connection to him, and so there was kind of like maybe you can help me make this work even better. And I don't know. I just think he wasn't as smart as someone like Merle, and as a result, his ego got in the way, and the governor ate him. Sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes the bear eats you.
The other thing I didn't like about the episode was I like Kirk Acevedo as an actor who played Mitch, but I didn't like the scene where the governor comes in. I get that he's at gunpoint, but basically saying, I killed your brother, and you're either going to sidle up with me or you're going to get the same fate. And that's all the resistance you put up?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was the governor, I wouldn't be trusting that guy at all. But and you see Mitch at the end, just they shared a little whisper next to each other, and so he's his right-hand man. Really? It's just that easy? He just killed your brother, for crying out loud. There's got to be and maybe it's a little quick to make that judgment on this episode. Maybe it comes into play in the next episode or later on. Maybe Mitch becomes.
I totally agree with you. I think it was just they needed to have him have a sergeant. He needed to have, he wanted to set it up. Basically, he wants to recreate Woodbury, and he needs somebody like Martinez, and that's the guy they chose to do. And
that was the only other Latino he could find. And
so I didn't like that. That's on my list of. It was just too hard to believe that he was basically okay with it. You know what I mean? By the way, that actor Peter was the guy that played Peter. I don't know his name, as I don't remember his name as an actor, but he was also in Joss Whedon's Dollhouse, and I loved him in that. He was good in that, so it was great to see him back.
Was he a male doll?
Yeah, he was one of the male dolls. Yep,
I thought he looked familiar.
Yep. Okay, a couple of things for me on the bad front. We didn't need this story told in 2 full episodes. It just completely derailed the momentum that I think that they had built. I'm also going to change. Last week, I think I said that I thought it was good that, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, that they, weren't going to go back and forth. They didn't chose not to go back and forth all season with the governor story and the prison story, like they did the previous season, where they were constantly going back and forth. But having now experienced these 2 full episodes of Governor, I wish they had, in fact, done it in a slow burn. Not the way they did Woodbury in the prison last year, where they were priced, like half episodes of each.
Right.
Instead, maybe just like one segment each week following the governor's story. You know what I mean? I think that might have been a good way to do it too, and then made it less, because it just, for me, it was like pouring water on the fire that was the first 5 episodes.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It was hard to believe that Peter's brother basically was okay with the governor killing him. I also thought it was a little hard to believe that the 2 brothers didn't suspect foul play in Martinez's death.
That's true. I thought that too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was just a little too hard to, too convenient that they went right along with that.
Where is that RV that they're hitting golf balls from? Because Martinez was doing some good shouting. Yeah. And no one heard it?
Yeah, I know, right? Once they're down on the ground, you can see that that's a different camper. I thought it was the camper that was his house, because he comes to his door and says, "Oh, I forgot, I wanted to show you something." He had just told him the scene before. Oh, that was the other thing too. Remember we were talking about, hand me the balls and you going to do the dirty work. And he kept reminding me you should fix that hole in the dripping ceiling. Yeah. It was just a little condescending, like, you're not doing your job. You're not
pulling your weight.
You're not what?
You're not pulling your weight.
Yeah, you're not pulling your weight. And of course the dripping was just the constant, eating away, a representative of eating away of the governor's wall between Brian and the governor.
You know what cracks me up? No, I just want to say, you know what cracked me up is if the writer was listening to this or the director, and you know they hear these podcasts. Yeah, so the metaphor of the dripping water was just eating away, and the writer's like, no, it wasn't. I just needed something to do while I was in the cabin.
No, bullshit. Why do we see it so many times? Why does Martinez make comment to it? You know?
I love how he pulls out a thing of duct tape. Like he's gonna. I'm just sitting there going, any homeowners looking at that like, really? Come on.
Really, that's hacking it. Hard to.
Well, he's the governor. He's not the plumber. So,
right. Is it me, or is there all of a sudden an awful lot of survivors all over the place?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, it's like there's like nobody ever, nobody but zombies, and then all of a sudden now we've had two huge camps of people, another mystery camp that's wiped out the second camp. I mean, it's like all of a sudden there's freaking surviving human beings everywhere.
Right.
It's like meanwhile they're in the prison, and it's obviously closed because you just drove right over there, and like no one's bothering, no one even. I mean, come on, if they're all like right on top of each other like that. These conflicts would have happened a lot sooner. So I don't know. That was just too much to.
And look, I get that the zombie apocalypse happened in the digital age, and everybody's got GPS and stuff. But Rand McNally still was making maps. I mean, someone's got to be looking at a map and going, holy crap! If we go up this road, there's a prison up there. Like no one's thinking of that.
Yep, I agree. It was impossible to me that they wouldn't have heard that second camp being attacked.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have walked a quarter mile or, 300, 400 yards away to set their traps over, but it wasn't implied that they like went on a day journey in an opposite direction. You know what I mean?
There was definitely a time compression there because was that supposed to happen the same day that they were out?
Oh,
was
yeah.
Next day?
They turn away, and then the next scene, they're like picking up the trappings, the rabbits and stuff like that.
Right, but that's awful fast to go in and wipe out an entire camp.
Well, not only that, but the governor turns and walks away, and they're like, well, where are you going? And he couldn't have walked more than 100 yards.
Right.
And he comes upon the murdered camp. And it's like, so how did they not hear that? So that was just unbelievable.
Daleks. Daleks. It is the Walking Dead Doctor Who crossover.
The Daleks?
Yeah.
Also, it would have been cool too. The other thing that bothered me about that sequence was they missed an opportunity to give us clues about who that would have been that did that,
right.
Creating another potential threat out there.
Yep.
Obviously, it's there, but instead it came off to me as being purely something to drive the story. And, if they had gone there and there was cannibalism going on, then it'd be like, we know who this is. Or if, there was like a baseball bat with barbed wire all over it stuck in one of the guy's head. You know what I mean? It's like, Negan's been here.
That would have been awesome.
You know what I mean? So, but they didn't do that. Instead, it's just, they get wiped out by some mysterious thing. And it's like, this is obviously just to drive the plot. So. Yeah, those were my. Oh, and then the only other thing I had under the bad category was poor Stomper. He doesn't even get.
We didn't even see his demise.
Lines the first 2 seasons or the last 2 seasons. Then, he doesn't even get to die in this one. He's like,
we hear about it after the fact. Yeah.
Oh, that was weak. That was weak.
Another thing too that it hit me when I was watching it, and I didn't write it in my notes, but I just happened to think of it now, is how far is the governor gone? Because it doesn't seem like he's gone all that far, and yet Michonne couldn't find him, and she was doing searching every single day for.
Well, it's like all roads are like some sort of circle that just keep leading back to the prison. I mean,
right?
I mean, it's like
they're on a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I mean, the guy walks for like 6 months or something, supposedly, or 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And then they get in a truck and drive for 5 minutes, and they're right outside the prison. And it's like, what?
Walks for 5 months, ends up walking right back to where Woodbury basically used to be. And,
right.
Well, he did go to Woodbury to torch.
Well, no, he goes to Woodbury first, right? And then he goes on his little Forrest Gump journey.
And falls into one of his pits.
Yeah. So that's it for bad, and then just ugly for me.
All right, what's your ugly?
Uh, the ugly for me is that I think they've just taken, I've kind of already mentioned a little bit, they just totally derailed the momentum of the season by doing these two episodes. And all it did was put us back to where the last season finale was. And,
Yep.
So that they could have a chance to like do that correctly, I guess. So as a result, for me, it just it feels very empty. I mean, I'm looking
Right.
forward to the finale in the sense of, it's going to be action packed and we're finally going to get back to the prison and,
And the tank. The
and
tank.
and maybe we'll get to see Daryl and Rick, have it out. But, and something's going to happen with somebody, with, in the Tyrese role. I don't know who that's going to be or whether it's going to be done the way it was in the comic, but they're going to have to do something like that. And, so I'm looking forward to all of that, but it's kind of like it's predictable. It's kind of like,
Right.
this should have happened last season. Now we got to go through these two episodes just to get back to the same place. He's got his army. He's lying to them. He's killing people within his circle. He's going to attack the prison. He wants to get revenge. But it's like, so that for me was, that was the big ugly.
Yeah, I agree. The when he gets to the end of the episode and he's driven 5 minutes away, just half mile away, and he's looking in the back door of the prison, and he sees Rick and Carl out hoeing and planting, and then he looks over and he sees Michonne sharing a smile with
hoeing.
Read into that how you will.
Yeah.
No, it's the plants. It's the plants. With Michonne giving a playful smile to Herschel, and there's a little. I guess the virus. We're done with the virus then, huh? Because it seems like everything's real happy there.
Yeah, they kind of implied that though at the end of the last episode of the prison, which is they get back with the medicine, they start injecting everybody with the antiviral drugs and giving people antibiotics so that I guess they've got with that thing you would get other types of bacterial infections on top of it, which would probably, like pneumonia and things like that. That would be the things that really kill you. You know what I mean? The virus is not really treatable with antibiotics, obviously, but any secondary infections would be, and that's often what kills people. So, you kind of I was left with the impression that was resolved.
But
I agree. It seems a little rushed. It wouldn't happen in one day with a bunch of treatments. It would take weeks for that to work out.
Well, yeah, and it seems horribly rushed in the context of the greater story. This was a threat for what are we on? Episode 7. So 7 and 6 are throwaway. So for the first 5 episodes of the season,
throw away.
For the first 5 episodes of the season, when I get this DVD, I'm going to cut it so that these 2 episodes aren't in there, and I'm just going to splice 8 to 5.
That's right.
So that was a threat, and we talked about how, hey, this is kind of cool. This raises the stakes for living in this environment. Now it I want to see because if there is a virus and it is a thing, it's got to be airborne, right? Which means that the governor's new crew's got to pick it up. Or is it just inherent to the prison, black mold and whatever? So it's got to be a thing. Otherwise, if it's not a thing, if it's just, we cured it, we gave everybody their shots and they're fine, well, then I got to throw the BS flag because then you haven't raised the stakes. I mean, It was just a thing to occupy us for 5 minutes.
I don't know. I think, like H1N1, it comes and then once it goes through its cycle, it moves out and the population, recovers and moves on and that isn't an issue anymore. So if it's that kind of viral infection, I could understand that. I agree with you ultimately, though, that I think it should continue to be played on or a factor in the new world. It's now part of the paradigm. When they see zombies with those eyes bleeding, they need to make sure that no one even touches them or comes in contact with their bodily fluid. You know what I mean?
No licking of eyeballs.
Yes, no eyeball licking. But I agree with you. I think that would go a long way to helping the integrity of that. But at the same time, I won't be upset if they move on past it because I think that there is some scientific ground for for that. My question is, was that purely, a biological evolution, or was it something planned or created or used against them by somebody? That was one of the things that was kind of implied. I always thought maybe the governor was sending these guys, these infected ones to them. And then the other one that is like the rats, if they
who was feeding them?
if they don't include any more of the virus issue, I agree with you. I'll be disappointed. The other is if they don't answer that issue of who's been feeding the zombies at the gate, I think they will have dropped a huge ball as well,
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not the governor. All this stuff that everybody was assuming was being caused by the governor wasn't, because he didn't show up until that was all done, pretty much.
We didn't make that prediction, did we? That wasn't us, was it?
I did.
Oh,
I did,
man.
definitely. I think it should have been.
Yeah, no, it would.
The governor should have been never. He just should have stayed evil, and he should have been slowly building up, this effort to retake the prison and correct the mistake he made or whatever, and filled with vengeance, and and he's just busy trying to hurt them through attrition and make them weaker through attrition. But instead, they went this whole other way with it. So. I guess, it's a calculated risk. You never know what story-wise is going to work best.
Well, one of the questions that's going around that I've seen out there on Twitter and on some of the blogs is, does the governor pull the trigger at the end of the episode? So and if he does, which one does he take out? Does he? Clearly he's looking for Michonne, but stranger things have happened. So does he take the shot? I don't think so.
When you say take the shot, what do you mean take the shot?
Remember when he was standing there, he pulls his gun out and he sights at Michonne and Herschel?
Right. Oh, does he take that shot? No,
yeah.
Absolutely not. You agree?
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh, absolutely not. He's a chess player. They've made that. They keep going back to that all the time. He understands, to take, a big piece off the board in that one move doesn't necessarily, that could screw up your whole win. What's important is winning. And he's going to realize that, if he takes his shot at her right then, he's just going to completely play his hand. They're going to know, they're going to start getting prepared for an attack, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to come out, and it's just going to completely undermine his sense of surprise. And I think he's too smart for that. And I think that's just a kid, to have a cliffhanger, But I will speculate. I'm going to go on the record here. I think that I think he's going to capture them. I think he won't shoot them. I think he may capture them right then at that moment. I don't know. Maybe it'll be at another time. But I guess I'm going to speculate that it's the Michonne and Herschel that he captures, and that that's who he brings to the prison and puts on their knees and says, open these gates and let us in, or we're going to kill these guys. And he uses Michonne's sword just like in the comic, and I think he takes Herschel's head off. That's my prediction.
All right.
And then Michonne escapes.
I can't fault that. Makes sense.
However, there is a scary thing that I saw. The Talking Dead had on last night. They had on Martinez, the actor that played Martinez. Yep. And it is very common for them to have on the actor that died in that episode. That they had T-Dog when he was on. They had, but he supposedly Tyrese, the actor that plays Tyrese, is going to be on that night. So I hope that isn't the way they go. It's not always the case.
No, it's not.
No, they've had people on that didn't, but I am worried about that because I think he's just been introduced too soon to take out now.
Oh, absolutely. That would be horrible. There would be a fan uprising to take him out because he's such a fan favorite from the comic, and because he's such a strong he's become such a strong character on the show.
And they waited so long to introduce him. I mean, in the comic, he was there from almost the beginning. So when you got to this point in the comic, he had been there for a long time. I think it would be a big mistake if they chose to keep the integrity of the comic in this particular instance and use him. But
all right, You heard it here first.
Yeah, who knows? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
I just want to see the tank go rumbling through the fence.
You've got
Trying
kind
to
of
fix
a
that.
one-track,
Fix that one with
kind
some
of a one-track mind with this finale.
Yeah, why don't you fix that with some logs there, Rick?
Let's see if we can put some duct tape on that. My zombie of the week was poor waterlogged Peter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't have a zombie kill of the week because they're really, and again, unlike the rest of the season, zombies very poorly used in this episode. In the last 2 episodes, I think they've been.
Well, I thought it was and you knew that that when the little girl was running around that she was gonna encounter a zombie, which I thought was a little ridiculous.
Well, you knew that was gonna happen the minute that the niece, the aunt, gives away the pistol.
Tara, yep.
Yeah, Tara. As soon as she gives away the pistol. Although, here's an interesting thing: Tara's sister, who's with the governor, is not
Lily.
Lily in the comic is the woman that shoots the governor
through his good eye.
Right. She's the one that also shoots Lori and the baby.
Yep.
And then turns around and says, you didn't tell us there are babies in here. You lied to us. You're blah, 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 blah. And then she shoots them. I wonder if that's going to play out again because, he's definitely kept this whole dark side to him. And she strikes me as somebody who's just being set up to get to get smacked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that's going to happen. My character of the week was Martinez, as I mentioned before. I felt bad for him. I think he had a good thing going. He seemed like he was pretty good to his people, and he just made a really sloppy mistake by taking the governor in and relaxing around him and confiding in him. But that's the human condition. We make bad decisions all the time.
My character of the week has to be. I guess I have to have one, otherwise I'd say nobody. But I would. Mine would be would have to be the governor, just because the dual aspects of he was Brian Harriet and he was the governor, and that duality that he was playing with the entire time was interesting to me.
I agree, and I thought it was really well done in this episode versus last episode. It was the conflict, the internal conflict within him was much better portrayed, both in the writing and in his acting, I think.
I think his acting, David Morrissey's acting between handling those two sides of himself is much better than Andrew Lincoln's when Andrew Lincoln's doing the same thing. I find it just more compelling on David Morrissey's. I was going to say, but that's probably because he's English, but Andrew Lincoln's English too. Yeah,
I've heard that before too, and I've read a lot of people online. It seems like people either like Rick or you hate Rick. I kind of I vacillate on it sometimes. For the most part, I like his character and I sympathize with the moral decision making that he struggles with. But there's been plenty of times when it's just been horribly nagging and nails on the chalkboard to watch. Especially in season 2. But yeah, I certainly can understand that, but I think that's partly also because they've made, Morrissey's struggle was much more classic, I think, in terms of black and white, in terms of good and evil, it's harder with the Rick storyline because he's never, he's done bad things. But not really. He's never done anything, right. He never, yes, he shot Shane, but Shane was trying to kill him. You know what I mean? So, his struggle internally is much more gray. And so that's harder to paint, I think, as an actor, I would guess, than Morrissey's, challenge, which is, between being, an average guy and being this, horrible nightmare of a villain,
right.
So in that respect, it's much more fun to watch, I guess.
My red shirt of the week was Pete but not for the reason. I didn't see the governor killing him. I thought it was going to be a Cain and Abel situation where Mitch was going to step up. Mitch has to be there. Mitch can't die this because he knows how to drive the tank. So he's got to be there.
Right.
So I just figured that was going to be the conflict between the two brothers. You know, we got to do this, we can't do this, and a fight was going to break out, and that for the best interest of the clan, Mitch was going to take out Pete, but I still had Pete as my red shirt of the week. And I agree with you. He becomes the zombie of the week as well. It's just the filming of that from looking down, and then when you're down below, anybody who's hydrophobic at all had to have just been crawling out of their skin. Very well done.
And it's true. It's like if they had tried to do that with CG or something, it would have been horrific, but it would have been terrible. But there was, because they took the time to really shoot it, it really came across. I mean, really, especially the shot from above when you're looking down. Just horrifying. Yeah, that'd be a horrible thing to come across and see.
It would be. All right. Anything else?
No, I think I think that the bottom line is that I think it was a good episode. It was better than last week, and it certainly set the stage for what will be, I think, a pretty climactic final mid-season finale. So in that sense, it was good, and it's nice to, I think we'll finally get some resolution to the governor storyline. My guess is that he will go down in the finale, and we'll move on to a new chapter.
So next week will be episode 8 called Too Far Gone, and then it's on hiatus, or it's on break until February. So. Right. All right, so if you're at this point in the podcast, you've wasted another good hour of your life listening to us yap about The Walking Dead. Although this episode 7, this discussion here, we have made it throughout the entire episode without using the word juxtaposition, which is a challenge and a success for us both. So, on that note, thank you for listening. And for more podcasts, go to southgatemediagroup.com. Download other podcasts. I co-host the American Horror Story podcast called Disturbed, and Southgate Media Group is a podcasting empire unto itself. It has podcasts for S.H.I.E.L.D., for Doctor Who, for like a dozen different shows. So go check them out. Leave comments and questions for us on Facebook. If we missed something in the show, or you want to tell us how awesome we are, please leave comments. And especially on iTunes, where the more likes we get, more comments we get, the farther up the food chain, the podcast chain we move. And we love that. So until next week, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Stay warm, and we'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. Take it easy, everybody. Have a great holiday.